I mean, I want you to picture something right now. You are sitting at your desk, and your brain feels exactly like a web browser.
Oh, I already know exactly where this is going.
Right, but it's not just a normal browser with, 3 or 4 neat little tabs. You have roughly 147 tabs open.
And half of them are completely frozen.
Exactly. Each one represents something you need to do, something you're worried about, or like something you're just supposed to remember. Half of these tabs are flashing aggressively with urgent red notifications.
Yes, the constant notification.
And somewhere, hidden in this massive mess, there is music playing. Maybe it's a terrifying news broadcast about the economy, maybe it's a catchy commercial jingle, but you absolutely cannot figure out which tab is making the noise.
That is the worst feeling.
And the entire time you're sitting there just trying to write one simple email, you can actively hear the cooling fan in your mind whirring at maximum capacity. You can physically feel your mental battery draining away to absolute zero.
It is an incredibly vivid image, and honestly, a deeply exhausting state of being.
Yeah, it really is. Hi, I'm Alex, a narrator from Summary Sanctum.
And I'm Bailey, also a narrator here at Summary Sanctum. And what you just described, that exhaustion, the tragedy, is that it's entirely accurate for how most of us operate today.
It really is.
We walk around completely drained, experiencing this constant low-grade hum of background anxiety. We like to think of our minds as these highly organized steel filing cabinets. But in reality, for almost every professional operating today, it is exactly that crashed, bloated, frozen browser window.
Which is exactly why we are plunging into this deep dive today. We are taking all the source material, the research, and the legendary methodology of David Allen.
Specifically, his foundational framework, getting things done.
Right, getting things done. And we are going to extract the absolute cure for that crashed browser. Our mission today revolves around one incredibly powerful, paradigm-shifting realization from his work. Are you ready for it?
Let's hear it.
Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. I really want you to let that sink in. Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them.
That is such a profound shift in perspective.
It changes everything. Over the course of this deep dive, we are going to map out the exact journey from that state of absolute system-crashing overwhelm to a state of relaxed, highly responsive control.
A state that martial artists actually refer to as having a mind like water.
Mind like water. I love that.
It really is a beautiful, evocative image. Think about it. When you throw a pebble into a perfectly calm pond, how does the water respond?
It just ripples, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It responds totally appropriately to the force and the mass of the input. It ripples, it adjusts to the exact displacement of the stone, and then it immediately returns to a state of perfect calm.
It doesn't freak out.
No, it doesn't overreact and create a tidal wave, because it was already stressed out. It doesn't underreact and freeze solid. It simply handles the input perfectly, processes it, and returns to baseline. That is the ultimate goal here for your psychology.
Okay, I love that, but before we go any further, I want to frame this right out of the gate for you, the listener, because I know what you might be thinking right now.
Let me guess. Oh, great, another time management hack.
Exactly. Let me guess. I need to wake up at 4 a.m., take an ice bath, buy a $200 leather planner, and color grade all my highlighters. No, this is not that.
Definitely not.
This is fundamentally a total psychological reset. So here is a question for you to chew on as we get started. What if the reason you are constantly stressed, the reason you feel behind on everything, the reason you feel like you are perpetually letting people down?
Which is an awful feeling.
It really is. But what if that isn't because you lack motivation? What if it isn't because you aren't intelligent enough? What if the real root cause is that you fundamentally misunderstand how your biological brain is actually designed to work?
That is the core provocation of all the research we're looking at today. We are so quick to blame ourselves.
Oh, constantly.
We look in the mirror and say, I just need to focus more, or I just need to stop being lazy and work harder. But the reality is much more systemic. The very nature of work has fundamentally, radically changed over the last few generations.
Yeah, the landscape is totally different.
And our biological hardware, our ancient evolutionary brains, they simply haven't caught up to the environment we are forcing them to operate in.
Let's explore that mismatch because I think it's the key to absolving a lot of the guilt people feel. Let's talk about the modern work dilemma and this fascinating concept of the psychology of stuff.
Yes, stuff with a capital S.
Right. We have to start by acknowledging that The daily reality of your job is completely unrecognizable compared to the work of your great-grandparents. We've shifted almost entirely from physical labor to knowledge work.
And the psychological difference between those two things is profound.
How so?
Well, it is the difference between night and day. Think about the agricultural age, or even the industrial age. If your job was plowing a field or packing boxes on an assembly line or forging horseshoes, the boundaries of your work were incredibly clear.
Right, you could literally see them.
Exactly. They were visually obvious, and more importantly, they were finite. You could stand at the edge of the field at sundown, look at the freshly turned dirt, and say, "The field is plowed. I am finished. The work is done."
The completion of the task was a physical reality in the world.
Right. It's tangible. You can touch it. Your brain registers the visual cue of completion, and it actually allows you to clock out mentally. But in knowledge work, there is no field.
There is no field. In modern knowledge work, the boundaries are completely amorphous. They're invisible. Think about your current job. How do you definitively know when a marketing campaign is done?
You really don't.
How do you know when a software user interface is perfect, or when you've done enough networking or read enough industry news?
The terrifying answer is you don't.
You don't. It could always be better. You could always tweak the copy, refine the code, or send just one more email.
And on top of that, job descriptions themselves are constantly morphing. You are rarely hired to do just one static set of repetitive tasks anymore. Your role shifts based on quarterly goals, new technologies, sudden market crises. And because we are all hyper-connected through our devices, the influx of potentially meaningful information and requests is absolutely endless.
Which explains exactly why all those traditional time management tools we were taught growing up fail completely. I'm talking about the tools from the 1980s and 90s.
The classic to-do list.
Yeah, the one where you sit down with your coffee, write out 10 tasks, and put an A, B, or C next to them to prioritize your day. In the modern ecosystem, those lists don't just fail, they actually make you feel worse.
They buckle under the weight of modern knowledge work. And they do that because an ABC prioritized list relies on a fundamentally flawed assumption.
Which is?
It assumes a static environment. It assumes that you can sit down at 8 a.m., accurately predict exactly what the most important things will be for the next 8 hours, and that the world will politely leave you alone while you do them.
Which is hilarious, honestly.
It really is, because we all know what actually happens. A single frantic email from your boss or a client at 8:15 a.m. can completely vaporize your entire A priority list. The landscape changes instantly.
Just gone.
And if your only tool for navigating the day is a static piece of paper with a rigid plan, the moment the plan breaks, you are left feeling completely out of control. You spend the rest of the day reactive, angry, and feeling like a failure because you didn't check off your A items.
That feeling of failure is so deeply tied to a critical definition in this methodology, and I want to spend some real time on this. It's the concept of stuff, capital S, stuff.
It's a very specific term here.
Yes, the source material defines stuff very specifically, and it's not just physical clutter on your desk. Stuff is defined as anything in your psychological or physical world that does not belong where it is, for which you haven't yet determined the desired outcome and the very next action step.
That definition is essentially the diagnostic tool for your anxiety. It is brilliant because it covers everything across the entire spectrum of your life.
Give me an example.
So, stuff is the vague thought floating in your head saying, I should really look into my retirement options because inflation is crazy right now. But stuff is also the broken printer sitting in the corner of your office that you just keep ignoring.
I definitely have one of those.
We all do. It's also the email sitting in your inbox from a colleague asking for thoughts on the new initiative. If you haven't explicitly decided what the final outcome looks like, and you haven't defined the very next physical action required to move it forward, it is just stuff.
And here's the real kicker. The psychological weight of all this unprocessed stuff is immense. The research points out a profound, almost uncomfortable truth. Your stress doesn't come from having too much to do. Your stress comes from broken agreements with yourself.
Yes. Broken agreements.
Okay, let's stop right there. Stress comes from broken agreements with yourself. When I read that in the sources, it felt like a punch to the gut. What exactly does that mean on a neurochemical level? Why does the brain hold on to these unmade decisions so tightly that it causes actual physical stress?
To understand that, we have to look at the brain's limitations. As a storage device for tasks and reminders, the human brain is actually terrible.
Really terrible.
It acts a lot like a poorly programmed, dumb terminal. It lacks the ability to filter by context. Let me give you the classic example from the research to illustrate this. Let's say your flashlight dies and you tell yourself, I need to buy new batteries.
Okay.
You've just made an agreement with yourself. Now, when does your brain actually remind you about those batteries? It reminds you when you are standing in your kitchen at 11:00 p.m. in the dark, trying to fix a leak under the sink, and you can't see anything. That is precisely when your brain says, hey, don't forget we need batteries.
Right, which is completely useless. I can't buy batteries at 11 p.m. when I'm under my sink holding a wrench.
Exactly. But when does your brain stay completely silent? When you are actually standing in the battery aisle at the hardware store 3 days later. It doesn't remind you then.
It's so frustratingly true.
Because your brain has no innate sense of past, future, or context when it comes to holding on to reminders. It just randomly fires off the alert based on vague associations. So these unfinished tasks, these unmade decisions, what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, or what this methodology simply calls open loops, they are constantly consuming your brain's limited working memory. It's RAM.
Just eating up all the processing power.
Your subconscious is continuously, exhaustively tracking every single agreement you've ever made with yourself. From massive things like end world hunger to mundane things like buy cat food. And because it can't distinguish between the importance of the two when it comes to storage, it creates a dull, pervasive pressure.
A constant background anxiety.
Exactly. An anxiety that drains your energy regardless of how significant the actual task is.
It's just like my smartphone analogy with the background apps. If I open a high-end video editor on my phone and then a GPS navigation app and then like 3 heavy 3D games and I just swipe out of them without actually closing them.
They're still running?
They are still running. They are quietly eating the processor in the background. Eventually, the phone gets physically hot, the battery burns up in an hour, and when I try to open a simple text message, the whole operating system stutters and crashes.
That's a perfect analogy.
Keeping vague mental to-do lists is the exact equivalent of leaving heavy apps running in your psychological background. But here is where I want to challenge this a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
I hear the mind like water concept. I love the idea of the calm pond, and I desperately want my brain to stop functioning like a hot, laggy smartphone. But is a perfectly calm pond actually achievable in reality? We are living in a world where we receive more project-shifting inputs in 72 hours than our parents did in an entire year.
It's a massive amount of input.
Right. The pebbles aren't just being tossed into the pond, they're being fired out of a Gatling gun. Can the pond ever actually be calm under that kind of assault?
It's a completely valid challenge, and it's the #1 objection people have when they first encounter this. They look at their inbox and say, this is impossible. But the answer is yes, mind like water is achievable, but you have to reframe what the calm actually is.
Okay, how so?
The calm does not come from stopping the pebbles from being thrown. You cannot stop the emails, the market demands, the family emergencies, or the Slack notifications. You don't control the world.
Unfortunately.
The calm comes from having an airtight, universally trusted system to process the input the very moment it hits the water. To stop your mental operating system from crashing, we must address the root cause, which are those open loops eating your RAM. And the secret here is that the first step isn't to magically solve all of your problems at once.
Thank goodness.
The first step is simply to wrangle them, to evict them from your working memory.
Okay, so how do we execute the eviction? Let's transition into the mechanics of this. How do we take that feeling of overwhelm and begin to neutralize it? This brings us to stage 1 of the workflow, the power of the collection habit.
This is where it all starts.
If you want to get to mind like water, you have to initiate a 100% mind sweep. And I want to be very clear with you listening. The sources warn us that this is not a cute little 10-minute journaling exercise you do while drinking your morning matcha.
Not at all.
This requires a massive commitment. We are talking about taking anywhere from 1 to 6 hours of dedicated, uninterrupted time to sit down and externalize every single thing that is pulling at your attention.
And when we say a 100% sweep, we really mean every single commitment. The scope of this collection phase is vast, and it has to be. If it is 99% complete, your brain will still hold on to that remaining 1% and the anxiety will remain.
It has to be comprehensive.
Yes. The rule of thumb is, if a thought has a should, a need to, or an ought to attached to it, it goes into your collection bucket. You are taking everything that is currently renting space in your head without paying rent, and you are forcing it out into the physical world, onto paper or into a digital inbox.
And it's not just a mental exercise, right? That's a literal physical sweep of your environment, too.
Absolutely.
You have to go through your physical desktop, your desk drawers, the floors of your office, your kitchen counters, and yes, even your car. The rule here is brilliantly simple, but absolutely brutal to execute. If an item in your space is not currently active supplies, reference material, decoration, or functional equipment, it goes into your in basket.
This physical sweep is crucial because it's where people inevitably fall into what is called the not-so-important trap.
Oh, I fall into this constantly.
We all have these items. It's the broken phone charger sitting in the bottom drawer. It's the magazine you got in the mail 3 months ago that has an article you meant to read, just sitting on the coffee table, gathering dust.
Staring at you.
Staring at you. Because these things aren't screaming emergencies. Nobody's going to die if you don't fix the charger. We just leave them there. But the research shows they are silently, continuously draining your energy.
How does that actually work, though?
Well, every single time you open that bottom drawer looking for a pen, your eyes scan past the broken charger, and in a fraction of a millisecond, your subconscious registers, "Oh, right, the charger, I need to fix that," or "throw it away." But I haven't decided yet. I'm failing at dealing with that.
Wow.
It is a micro drain on your psychic energy, a tiny withdrawal from your willpower account, simply because a decision hasn't been made.
I have a drawer in my kitchen that is entirely filled with micro drains, just dead batteries, spare keys to locks I no longer own, rubber bands. It's a drawer of psychological fatigue.
We all have the dreaded junk drawer.
So you do the sweep, you pile up all the physical clutter into a massive physical inbox, and you write down pages and pages of mental open loops into a massive list. Now, I want to talk about what actually happens in the human body when you do this.
This is fascinating.
Because what is so interesting to me is the emotional roller coaster the sources describe when people finally see all their stuff in one place.
It is an entirely paradoxical emotional response. The immediate visceral reaction when you gather all of your stuff into one giant pile, when you see the 300 items written on legal pads and the physical mountain of unread mail and broken gadgets, is immense, suffocating panic.
I can imagine. Just looking at it would be terrifying.
You are suddenly undeniably confronting the sheer volume of everything you have committed to doing but haven't actually done. You can no longer hide from it. It looks like an unconquerable mountain. But here's the magic. That spike of panic is almost instantly followed by an incredible, washing sense of relief and control.
But wait, why the relief? The mountain hasn't gotten any smaller. You haven't actually accomplished a single task yet. It's the exact same amount of work you had an hour ago.
It is the same amount of work, but the relationship has completely changed. You feel relief because you have finally externalized it. You are no longer forcing your delicate, highly evolved prefrontal cortex to act as a sticky note.
I see.
And this brings us back to that crucial idea of renegotiating the agreements you've made with yourself. Think about it. You cannot renegotiate an agreement that you can't explicitly remember making.
Right.
If the vague command, "I really need to clean out the garage," is just floating around in the dark waters of your subconscious, it will nag you endlessly. Every time you pull into the driveway, you'll feel a spike of guilt.
Yep, the driveway guilt.
But by pulling it out of your head during the mind sweep and writing "clean the garage" on a physical piece of paper, you can finally look at it objectively. You can look at that piece of paper and consciously, rationally say to yourself, "You know what? I have a massive presentation at work this week, and my kid has a soccer tournament. I am actively deciding not to clean the garage this week."
Oh, that's powerful.
By explicitly deciding to defer it, you have effectively silenced the internal nagging. You have consciously renegotiated a contract with yourself, and your brain accepts the new terms. The guilt vanishes.
Okay, that makes perfect intuitive sense. It reminds me of the classic put it in front of the door trick.
Yes, exactly.
If you know you absolutely have to bring a specific vital document to work tomorrow morning, what do? You don't trust your 7:00 a.m. half-awake, under-caffeinated brain to remember it. You take the document the night before and you put it directly on top of your car keys.
Or you literally put it on the floor, blocking the front door.
Right, so you literally have to step on it to leave the house. You are building an external trigger because you intimately know and respect the limitations of your own internal memory. This collection habit, this massive mind sweep, is essentially just executing the put it in front of the door trick on a massive, comprehensive scale for your entire psyche.
That's a perfect analogy. You are building a trusted external architecture so your internal architecture can rest.
But I have to ask the obvious question here. I'm sure someone listening is thinking this exact thing right now because I definitely thought it.
Go for it.
If I sit down and write out every single tiny task, from buy organic cat food to reorganize the entire marketing department's workflow, don't I just create an uncontrollable, terrifying monster of a list? I mean, a list that is so long and so dense that it just makes me want to crawl right back under the covers, avoid my office entirely, and binge watch television.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you stop there, you have just created an altar to your own procrastination. Having a massive pile of collected stuff is terrifying if you leave it as just a pile of raw stuff. Writing it down is only the very first stage.
Okay, thank goodness.
The actual magic, the alchemy that transforms the system from a source of anxiety into a source of power, happens in how you convert that raw, terrifying material into concrete reality. That is where we move from the collection phase into the processing phase.
So let's get into the mechanics of that alchemy, because this is where the system completely breaks away from normal to-do list advice. Processing, and the crucial next action decision. Here is where we separate the amateurs who are just shuffling paper around from the people who actually experience mind like water.
It really is the dividing line.
And the absolute golden rule here is pretty counterintuitive. Processing your inbox does not mean doing the tasks in your inbox. It means deciding what the tasks actually are.
This is a vital distinction, and it's where most people get bogged down. When you look at your massive in-basket, you are not trying to execute the work. Your only goal is to empty the in-basket by making a definitive decision about what every single item means to you.
Right.
And to prevent you from getting paralyzed, there are incredibly strict rules for how you interact with your in-basket.
The rule that stood out to me the most, because it is honestly my worst habit, is process the top item first. No emergency scanning. You cannot dig through the pile to find the fun stuff or the easy stuff or the things that take 5 seconds.
Emergency scanning is a massive trap.
Why is it so bad, though?
Because when you dig through the pile looking for the most important thing, you are implicitly looking at the other 50 items and deciding, not you, not you, not you. Every time you do that, you are spending a fraction of your mental energy dreading those items. You are keeping them as open loops.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
To break that cycle, you have to act like a machine.
Yeah.
You process one item at a time, strictly in order from top to bottom. You pick it up, you make a decision, and this is the absolute law of the system. Nothing ever goes back into in. Once you pick it up, it must move forward into your system.
So what is the actual decision-making process? I'm holding a random piece of paper I found on my desk that just says tires with a question mark. Or I'm looking at an email from my boss with a vague link to an article and the subject line, thoughts. What is the algorithm I run this through?
It's a surprisingly simple binary decision tree. When you pick up any item, you ask 2 questions. First, what is it? You'd be amazed how many things in our physical and digital inboxes are just vague, undefined pieces of information until we force ourselves to articulate what they actually mean.
That's very true.
Second, and most importantly, is it actionable? Does this item require me to physically do something to move it forward?
Let's play this out. Let's say I look at the item and the answer is NO. It is not actionable. What are my options? I feel like my instinct is just to leave it there, just in case.
Leaving it there is a violation of the rule. If it's not actionable, you only have 3 permissible choices.
Okay, what are they?
1, trash it. You have to be ruthless if you don't need it. If it has no real value, throw it away. Delete the email. Recycle the paper.
Liberating. Okay, number 2.
2, intubate it. This is for things you might want to do later, but definitely not now. You put it on a someday maybe list. Things like learn to play acoustic guitar, or visit Kyoto, or look into taking a coding class.
So it's safe, but not pressuring you.
Exactly. It's completely off your mind. It demands no action from you today, but the idea is safely captured for a future review. And 3, file it as reference. It requires no action, but it's information you might need later. A software manual, a takeout menu for the good Thai place, or an old financial statement.
You put it in a trusted filing system where you can find it if you need it, but it's out of your sightline.
Precisely.
Simple enough. Trash, incubate, reference. But what if the answer is yes? The item is actionable. I actually have to do something about it.
If it is actionable, the rules demand that you immediately determine 2 things. First, you must determine the intended project outcome. What does done look like for this item? Second, and this is the crux of the entire methodology, you must determine the next action.
The next action. The sources hammer this concept over and over, and for good reason. The defining rule of a next action is what makes this entire system function. It must be a physical, visible activity.
Yes, physical and visible.
Let's use a real example because I think people get this wrong constantly. If I write down on my to-do list, get cartooned up, the methodology says that is a failure. That is not a next action. Why?
Because you can't actually do a cartoon up in one continuous step.
Unless you are currently wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit and holding a wrench?
Exactly. Get cartooned up is a multi-step project. The actual next action is call Fred to get the phone number for the Good Garage on 5th Street, or open laptop and search for mechanic reviews.
That distinction is the secret to overcoming procrastination. When you write down get cartooned up, you are creating a massive psychological gap. Your brain looks at those words and subconsciously freaks out.
It does. It thinks, wait, I don't know a good mechanic. I don't know the phone number. I don't know when they're open. I don't know how much it will cost. I don't know how I'll get to work without my car.
That gap between where you are and the vague outcome of cartooned up creates immense psychological resistance. Resistance leads to dread, and dread leads directly to procrastination.
But by taking the 10 seconds to define the very next granular physical movement, picking up your phone, opening your contacts, and calling Fred, you've completely bridged that gap. You give your brain a concrete, simple, non-threatening task that it knows exactly how to execute.
Here's where the research gets incredibly fascinating to me. We typically associate procrastination with laziness or a lack of discipline, but the sources explain why the smartest, most creative people, the people who are supposedly the high achievers, are often the most chronic, paralyzed procrastinators.
It's a brilliant insight. Procrastination is rarely about laziness. Highly intelligent, highly creative people generally have very active, sensitive nervous systems. Their brains are incredibly good at simulating the future.
So they see all the possibilities.
Yes. So when a highly creative person looks at a vague task on a list, let's use the classic example, do taxes. Their brain doesn't just see a piece of paper. Their brain instantly, vividly visualizes the entire complex, worst-case scenario nightmare of that project.
Like a movie playing in their head.
Exactly. In a fraction of a second, they simulate losing their receipts, making a math error, getting audited by the government, losing their savings, and ending up in tax jail.
Tax jail.
That intense, high-definition visualization triggers a very real physiological fight-or-flight response.
Ugh.
Cortisol floods their system. They feel genuine fear and exhaustion just looking at the word taxes. So what do? They instantly shut down and avoid the task to protect themselves from the stress.
They literally scare themselves out of doing the work because their imagination is too powerful. They're too good at anticipating how hard it will be.
Precisely. Their intelligence works against them. And the antidote to that paralysis is what the methodology calls intelligent dumbing down.
Intelligent dumbing down.
You have to outsmart your own runaway brain. You force that brilliant, anxious mind to focus purely on the very next, most mundane physical movement required. You tell yourself, do not think about the audit. Do not think about the IRS. Your only goal right now is to open the desk drawer, take out the manila envelope labeled W-2, and place it on the center of the desk.
Because opening a drawer doesn't trigger a fight or flight response.
Exactly. It completely relieves the pressure,
Yeah.
and once the envelope is on the desk, the momentum begins.
I love the idea of intelligent dumbing down. And speaking of momentum, we have to talk about my absolute favorite rule in this entire ecosystem. It's the ultimate productivity hack, but it's rooted in pure math. The 2-minute rule.
Oh, it is legendary.
So lots about the rule.
The rule states, during your processing phase, once you determine what the next action is, if that specific physical action takes 2 minutes or less to complete, you do not write it down. You do not put it in a folder. You do not schedule it. You just do it instantly, right then and there.
The sources share an incredible anecdote about this that blew my mind. There's a vice president of a major software company. He was brilliant, but he was drowning. He had a massive, crippling backlog of thousands of unread emails. He was overwhelmed and becoming a bottleneck for his entire department. An expert came in and taught him just the single rule, the 2-minute rule, nothing else. They sat down, and the VP started looking at his inbox. If an email required a quick yes, proceed, no, we don't have budget, or call me at 3 p.m., he just hit reply and did it.
Just instant execution.
By doing this ruthlessly, he cleared thousands of emails in a fraction of the time he expected. He regained an hour a day of discretionary time and totally transformed his department's response time. All from adopting the philosophy of, if it takes less than 120 seconds, I am executing it right now.
The reason the 2-minute rule is so powerful is because it is mathematically sound. Think about the life cycle of a task. If an action takes 60 seconds to do, like texting your spouse to confirm dinner plans, but instead of doing it, you decide to organize it. You take 15 seconds to write it on your to-do list, you take another 10 seconds to categorize it. The next day, you spend 5 seconds reading it during a review, you spend another 5 seconds thinking about it.
You're wasting time.
You've just spent 35 seconds of mental energy managing a task that only takes 60 seconds to execute. It is incredibly inefficient. It actually takes more cumulative time and cognitive overhead to track a 2-minute task than it does to just finish it and get it out of your life forever.
That makes total sense.
The 2-minute rule clears the underbrush of your daily life at lightning speed, creating massive psychological momentum.
To put a bow on this processing segment, I want to share a visual analogy that came to mind while I was reading this. Keeping vague, unprocessed items on a to-do list, like writing mom's birthday instead of call the bakery to order mom's cake, is exactly like planting psychological landmines in your own notebook.
Landmines, that's good.
Every single time you open that list and your eyes scan over the words mom's birthday, it literally repulses you. You flinch internally. Why? Because it represents a decision you still haven't made. It's an open loop, demanding RAM. Every time you look at it and don't do it, you experience a micro-failure.
And that builds up.
It creates fatigue instead of motivation. You have to diffuse the landmine by deciding the next action.
That is exactly what is happening. A list of vague intentions is just a list of unmade decisions. And decision fatigue is a very real, scientifically proven phenomenon. Every decision you make, no matter how small, depletes a finite reserve of willpower. By deciding the next actions up front during processing, you save your willpower for the actual execution.
Okay, so let's summarize where we are. We've done the terrifying mind sweep and collected everything. We've ruthlessly processed that pile into concrete, physical next actions. We've trashed the junk, and we've executed the 2-minute tasks.
We are making progress.
But now we're left with a stack of defined actions that take longer than 2 minutes. We need a place to put them where they won't get lost, and more importantly, where our brain won't worry about them. Which brings us to stage 3 of the workflow. Organizing for intuitive trust.
And trust is the absolute operative word there. It is the bedrock of the entire system.
Why is trust so critical?
Because the physical organization system you build, whether it's digital folders, an app, or a physical binder, must be demonstrably, undeniably superior to your brain's mental storage. If your brain senses even a slight weakness in your system, if it suspects that a task might slip through the cracks, it will immediately take the job back.
Oh, it will revert to the old ways.
It will resume acting as the dumb terminal, and it will start waking you up at 3 a.m. again to remind you about the cat food because it knows your lists are a disorganized mess.
So how do we guarantee that trust? How do we convince our ancient brain that the external system is secure? The methodology insists on this core concept of hard edges.
Hard edges mean that the boundaries between your categories must be pristine and absolute. You cannot have bleed over. You cannot mix actionable items with reference materials or someday maybe dreams.
Give me a visual of that.
Imagine you have a physical stack of papers on your desk. Half of those papers are urgent contracts needing a signature today, and the other half are interesting magazine articles you'd like to read on a Sunday afternoon. If they're in the same pile, your brain will go numb to that entire stack. You won't trust it.
Because it's a mixed bag.
Right. When you are busy, you will avoid the pile because you don't want to sift through articles to find contracts. When you are relaxing, you'll avoid the pile because you don't want to some urgent contracts. The boundaries between what is actual and what is not must be absolute.
And nowhere is that concept of hard edges more critical than with the calendar. The sources treat the calendar as sacred ground. It is the holy of holies in this system.
The sacred calendar. The rule is that your calendar is only for what the author calls the hard landscape of your day. This means 2 things, and only 2 things.
What are they?
First, time-specific appointments. A dental appointment at 2:00 p.m. or a Zoom meeting at 10:00 second. Day-specific actions.
Yeah.
I absolutely must call Rachel on Tuesday because she leaves for vacation on Wednesday. If an item does not strictly fit one of those 2 criteria, it does not touch the calendar.
Okay, here's where I have to play devil's advocate and really push back.
I'm ready.
Because if you open up social media right now, every single productivity influencer, CEO, and life coach is screaming about the magic of time blocking.
Oh, time blocking is everywhere.
They say that if you don't schedule block time on your calendar for every single task, you are failing. They tell you to block out 9:00 to 10:30 a.m. for deep work drafting and 10:30 to 11:00 for email processing. If I have a normal, important to-do, like draft the quarterly report, why is putting that on my calendar considered a fatal error in this system?
It's a great challenge because time blocking is incredibly popular. But here is the psychological reality of why it fails for the vast majority of dynamic knowledge workers. If you put aspirational to-dos on your calendar, things you hope to get done at 9:00 a.m., but don't strictly legally have to get done at that exact minute, you will inevitably miss some of them.
Something always comes up.
An urgent call comes in, a server goes down, your kid gets sick. Suddenly, your perfectly color-coded, blocked-out day is ruined by 9:15 a.m.
And then what happens psychologically?
When you look at your calendar at the end of the day and see 3 blocks of tasks that you simply didn't do, a subtle but dangerous psychological shift happens. You begin to subconsciously distrust your own calendar. The lines blur. It dilutes the urgency of your true appointments.
Oh, I see.
If your calendar says, meet with CEO at 2:00 p.m. and write report at 3 p.m. there, and you know deep down that the 3:00 p.m. block is actually optional and you can blow it off, your brain starts to treat the 2:00 p.m. block as slightly optional too. To maintain absolute trust, you must keep the calendar pristine. Only the unbreakable hard landscape.
Okay, that makes total sense. The calendar is for the inflexible reality of time. So if my 100 other tasks aren't scheduled on my calendar, where do they live?
They go on context-based action lists.
This was a light bulb moment for me. Organizing tasks not by priority, not by topic, but by where you physically are and what tools you have available to you.
It is a brilliantly pragmatic approach. Let's say you have 20 minutes between meetings, and you are sitting at your desk in the office. You do not want to scan a massive, overwhelming master list of 150 mixed tasks.
No, that sounds awful.
You don't want to see buy fertilizer for lawn when you are at the office because you can't do anything about it. It's useless noise. Instead, you only open your at computer list or your at office list. If you're out on a Saturday running errands, you only look at your at errands list.
It acts as an automatic environmental filter.
Exactly. Stripping away all the noise and showing you only the actions that are actually physically possible for you to execute in that exact moment.
It reminds me of the inventory system in a role-playing video game. Let's say you're playing an RPG, and your character jumps into the underwater level. You open your inventory screen, and your flamethrower weapon is completely grayed out. You can't even select it.
Right, because it won't work underwater.
You don't have to waste any mental energy deciding whether to use the flamethrower, because the context makes it impossible. Your context lists do the exact same thing for your real life. If you are stuck in the traffic jam level of your day, your inventory only highlights the phone call weapon. The spreadsheet weapon is grayed out because you aren't at a computer. It eliminates decision fatigue immediately.
That is a fantastic way to visualize it. It respects your physical reality. Now, alongside these context lists, we also have to talk about projects, because the definition of a project in this methodology is radically different than how corporate project managers use the word.
Radically different. The sources have a very broad, almost shockingly simple definition. A project is defined as any desired outcome that requires more than one action step to complete within a year. That's it.
Getting new tires for your car, that's a project.
Fixing the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, project. Acquiring a rival tech startup, also a project.
Which means most people, if they actually do the mind sweep honestly, will realize they don't have 3 or 4 projects. They have anywhere from 30 to 100 active projects going on at any given time across their professional and personal lives.
That's a lot of projects to track.
It is. And the crucial rule here is, projects do not go on your daily action lists. You cannot do a project. You can only do the individual next actions related to that project.
So where do they go?
Therefore, projects go on a dedicated master projects list. This master list is simply a table of contents. It's a placeholder to ensure that no multi-step outcome falls through the cracks, allowing you to review them and ensure every single project has at least one active next action moving it forward.
To support this entire architecture, the sources dive surprisingly deep into the physical mechanics of the tools you use, and they emphasize the absolute necessity of what they call frictionless tools.
Yes, the tools are very important.
I want to talk about this because it sounds incredibly pedantic at first, but the psychology behind it is profound. Let's talk about the label maker.
It does sound like a minor obsessive detail, but it is psychologically huge. The methodology is borderline obsessed with having a high-quality label maker, like a dedicated Brother P-Touch, sitting on your desk and using plain manila folders instead of those green hanging files with the little plastic tabs.
Why those specifically?
It comes down to friction and micro-resistance. If filing a piece of paper requires you to handwrite a messy label with a Sharpie, or worse, wrestle with tearing off a tiny piece of cardboard, sliding it into a sharp plastic tab, and trying to jam it onto a hanging folder.
It's the worst. I always cut my finger on the plastic tab.
Exactly. You will experience a micro level of resistance. It's annoying. And because it's annoying, you won't do it. You will just drop the paper in a generic pile on your desk and tell yourself you'll file it later.
And we all know later means never, and the pile just grows until you want to burn the desk down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you have a label maker right at your fingertips and a fresh stack of crisp, plain folders, you type the name, you get that satisfying click-clicks of the machine printing the label, you peel the back, place it perfectly on the folder, and drop the paper in.
It sounds so nice.
It is fast, it is aesthetically crisp, and it is actually quite neurologically satisfying. It removes the friction. It fundamentally changes your behavioral relationship with your reference material. If the right thing to do is also the easiest and most satisfying thing to do, you'll actually build the habit.
It's about designing your environment so that your lazy brain chooses the productive path. And speaking of clever environmental design, I have to bring up the tickler file. When I first read this, it sounded like something out of a Cold War spy novel.
The tickler file.
It's brilliant. It is actually an incredibly brilliant, completely analog system for bridging the gap between things that are actionable and things that are incubating.
The tickler file is essentially a physical, three-dimensional calendar for paper and physical objects. It is a system composed of exactly 43 physical folders. You have 31 folders, numbered 1 through 31, representing the maximum days in a month. And behind those, you have 12 folders representing the months of the year.
Let's walk through a practical scenario of how this actually works, because it's ingenious. Let's say it is currently October 2nd. I check my mail, and I receive physical concert tickets for a show that is happening on November 15th. I don't need these tickets right now. If I leave them on my desk, they are clutter, and I might spill coffee on them. If I file them away in a deep cabinet, I might forget them. What do I do with the tickler file?
You take those tickets and you drop them into the monthly folder labeled November. That's it. They are off your desk and off your mind. Now you proceed through October. When October ends and November 1st arrives, part of your routine is to open the November folder. You take everything out of it, including those concert tickets, and you distribute those items into the daily 1 through 31 folders based on when you need them. So you drop the tickets into daily folder number 15. Every single morning, as a core habit, you open the folder for that specific date, empty it out, and move the empty folder to the back of the cycle for next month.
So it's rotating.
Yes. When you open folder 15 in the morning of the concert, boom, there are your tickets, handed directly to you exactly when you need them.
It is literally a perpetual post office sitting on your desk, allowing you to mail physical reminders to your future self. It's brilliant.
It's incredibly effective for physical items.
So setting up this pristine, hard-edged system, your context list, your master project list, your frictionless files, your tickler system, it is incredibly satisfying. You feel like a master of the universe.
You really do.
But, and this is a massive but, it's a bit like buying a brand new high-performance sports car. It doesn't matter how beautiful the leather interior is or how powerful the engine is on day one. If you never change the oil, if you never check the tire pressure, the engine is going to seize up and the car will die on the highway.
That is so true.
Which brings us to the engine maintenance of this entire philosophy. Stage 4 of the workflow, the weekly review. The methodology calls this the absolute linchpin of the system.
It is the linchpin because without it, the system will inevitably decay. It is the law of thermodynamics. Entropy happens. No matter how perfectly you set up your folders on a Sunday, the real world is chaotic.
Very chaotic.
The world will throw more inputs at you on a random Tuesday morning than you could possibly process in real time. Things will get misplaced, a meeting will run late, and you'll scribble a note on a napkin and shove it in your pocket. Priorities will shift overnight, and slowly those toxic open loops will start sneaking back into your head.
The weekly review is your dedicated, non-negotiable time to stop the world, gather, process, and organize everything all over again. The goal is to do whatever is mechanically required to get your head completely empty and your system completely trusted again.
The drill for the review is rigorous, and it has to be done in a specific sequence.
Walk us through the drill.
You start by gathering all the loose papers, receipts, and business cards that accumulated on your desk or in your bag. You process all the random notes you scribbled during meetings. You review your past calendar. Did you actually send the follow-up email from Wednesday's meeting? You look at your future calendar to see what landmines are coming up next week.
It's a total sweep.
Yes. You update your master projects list, checking off the projects you completed, and ensuring that every single active project has a clear, physical next action defined. You review your waiting for list, which is crucial. These are the things you delegated to others or are waiting on a reply for. You ping those people. And finally, you do another mini mind sweep to catch any rogue thoughts hiding in the corners of your brain.
The sources mention a specific psychological phenomenon that occurs when you do this correctly, and I think everyone has experienced this feeling at least once in their life. It's called pre-vacation clarity.
Yes. I love this concept. Think about how you operate on the Friday afternoon before you leave for a 2-week vacation to a tropical island where you won't have cell service.
You become a superhero.
You are an absolute productivity machine. You are tying up every loose end. You are returning every critical call. You are delegating tasks clearly. You are clearing your physical desk. When you finally walk out of the office at 5:00 p.m., you feel this profound, almost euphoric sense of clarity and control because you know exactly what is handled, what is delegated, and what can wait. You have zero open loops.
It's the best feeling.
The weekly review is a mechanism designed to artificially induce that exact state of pre-vacation clarity every single week of your life.
It sounds like an absolute superpower. But, and here comes the pushback again.
Hit me.
It requires a massive sacrifice. You have to sacrifice the urgent for the important. The sources explicitly recommend carving out a solid 2-hour block, often on Friday afternoons, which seems to be the golden time where you hold the world at bay. You turn off the phone, you shut your office door, you ignore Slack, and you just review.
Yes, 2 undisturbed hours.
Look, if I tell my director that from 2:00 p.m. to 4:00 p.m. every Friday, I am completely unreachable because I need to look at my lists, I might get laughed out of the room or fired.
A lot of people feel that way.
The corporate culture right now is instant response. Slack messages demand a 30-second turnaround. We are praised for constant motion. How is a 2-hour blackout period even feasible or justifiable in the modern, hyper-connected corporate ecosystem?
It is the hardest habit to build, exactly because of that cultural pressure. People say, I am too busy doing real work to take 2 hours off just to plan.
But the counter-argument is that you literally cannot afford not to do it. Think about the invisible cost of a decayed system.
What's the cost? If you skip the review, your system becomes untrustworthy. When your system decays, your biological brain is forced to take back the job of remembering everything. The moment your brain takes back the job, you lose your intuitive focus. You go right back to the crashed browser state.
The spinning wheel of death.
Exactly. You spend your week being driven entirely by the loudest, most urgent crisis in your inbox, rather than steering the ship strategically toward your actual goals. You start dropping balls, missing deadlines, and then you have to work all weekend in a panic to fix the mistakes.
So it's actually saving time.
The 2 hours you invest in the review on Friday will save you 10 to 15 hours of thrashing, rework, and reactive firefighting the next week. As for justifying it to a boss, frame it as strategic alignment. I take Friday afternoons to align all my project deliverables with our quarterly goals to ensure nothing slips through the cracks.
Oh, well, that's good.
No boss will argue with that. You are operating from a place of strategic, relaxed control rather than a place of frantic anxiety.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. Strategic alignment.
Okay, so let's assume the listener is fully bought in. They did the epic mind sweep, they processed the next actions, they have their context lists, they're doing their weekly review religiously, the system is humming, the browser tabs are closed, they are finally ready to execute the actual work.
The rubber is meeting the road.
But here is the boots on the ground reality. It is a random Tuesday at 10:26 a.m. You have finished your meeting. You have a menu of 40 potential next actions across your context lists. How do you actually practically choose what to do in that exact moment? Which leads us to stage 5 of the workflow, doing and making action choices.
This is where you actually get things done. You have a beautiful system. How do you navigate it minute by minute? The methodology provides a very specific 4-criteria model for making these in-the-moment choices, and you have to apply these criteria in a strict sequential order to avoid decision fatigue.
Let's break them down. Criteria number 1, context. We touched on this earlier. Where are you and what tools do you have? Context acts as your ultimate immediate filter. If you are sitting in a dentist's waiting room and all you have is your smartphone, you do not need to look at the tasks that require your dual-monitor desktop computer or a face-to-face meeting with your boss. You only pull up your at-calls list or your at-phone list. Instantly, your menu of 40 options is reduced to 5.
Criteria number 2, time available. This is straightforward but crucial. Do you have 10 minutes before your next Zoom call starts, or do you have a completely clear, uninterrupted 2-hour block? You match the physical duration of the task to the window you have. You don't start drafting a complex legal brief when you have 8 minutes until a meeting.
Exactly. But it is criterion number 3 that I think is the most profound and the one people ignore the most. Energy available. What is your actual biological energy level right now? Are you fresh, highly caffeinated, and intensely focused? Or is it 4:30 p.m. on a Thursday and your brain is completely fried?
This is the absolute beauty of the energy criterion. If your system is clean, fully processed, and trusted, you can still be highly productive even when you feel biologically terrible.
Yes, you don't have to stop working.
If you are exhausted, you don't have to force yourself to tackle the high-level strategic planning document. That will just lead to staring blankly at a screen. Instead, you open your system, sort by energy, and pick a low-energy task. You say, okay, my brain is dead. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes filing these expense receipts, organizing my digital desktop, or watering the office plants.
You are still executing. You are still closing open loops. You are still moving the machinery of your life forward, but you are honoring and matching the work to your biological reality. It removes the guilt of not doing hard work when you're tired.
It turns exhaustion into a different type of productivity.
And finally, only after you have filtered your options by context, time, and energy, do you reach the 4th and final criterion, priority. Given where you are, the time you have, and how much energy you possess, what is the single most important thing to do from the remaining highly filtered options? Because you've narrowed it down so much, the answer is usually completely obvious.
But the reality of a Tuesday at 10:26 a.m. is rarely just peacefully looking at a list and picking an item. Things happen. Crises erupt. Which is why the sources also detail the threefold model of evaluating daily work.
This is a great framework.
This essentially breaks your day into 3 types of activities. Doing predefined work, which is executing the tasks on your lists. Doing work as it shows up, handling ad hoc surprises and emergencies, and defining your work, which is processing your inbox to create new lists.
And the ultimate trap here is what we mentioned earlier, emergency scanning. It is incredibly seductively easy to spend your entire day, every day, just doing work as it shows up, reacting to the loudest email, responding to the person standing at your desk, asking for a favor, putting out fires.
It feels productive.
It feels highly productive in the moment because you are busy and the adrenaline is pumping. But if you only do work as it shows up, you are completely abandoning your predefined work, which usually contains your actual long-term goals and strategic projects.
The sources make a profound point here. True competitive advantage in the modern economy doesn't come from ignoring emergencies. It comes from being able to pivot to those ad hoc crises without losing track of your predefined work.
That's the balance.
If you have an airtight system, you can put the fire out, handle the screaming client, and then instantly return to your desk, open your contacts list, and pick up exactly where you left off without the lingering anxiety of wondering what important balls you dropped while you were firefighting. Your system held the baseline for you.
That is horizontal mastery. You're managing all the diverse horizontal tasks across the surface of your daily life. But we have to address the other dimension. What happens when you encounter a specific project that is massive, complex, and feels totally stuck? A project that requires real, deep thought, not just a quick next action.
That brings us to vertical focus and the natural planning model. When a project is too big or too nebulous to just identify a single next action, say planning a massive corporate merger or designing a new house, you need a different kind of mental engagement.
The sources make a fascinating argument here. They argue that as humans, we actually already know how to plan perfectly. Our brains are hardwired for it. We just forget to do it the moment we walk into an office building.
It's true. The human brain has a natural, deeply ingrained 5-phase process for planning anything. It is the exact same biological process you use to plan a highly complex endeavor or a mundane weekend activity. The sources use a great, relatable example to illustrate this: planning a dinner out with friends.
It's a great example.
Let's walk through it because the contrast with corporate planning is hilarious. Phase 1 of natural planning is purpose and principles. Why are we doing this and what are the boundaries?
Before you even think about picking a restaurant, your brain instinctively asks, why are we going out? Is it to celebrate someone's promotion? Is it a romantic date? Or are we just grabbing a quick bite because we are starving and the fridge is empty? The purpose dictates everything else.
And the principles.
And your principles are the constraints. We only have $50 to spend, or Sarah's a vegan, so it has to have options. You establish the rules of the game instantly.
Phase 2, outcome visioning. What does wild success look and feel like?
You imagine the end state. You see yourself sitting at a lively, dimly lit Italian place, having great conversation, drinking a good glass of wine. You haven't made a reservation yet, you don't even know which restaurant it is, but you clearly see the successful outcome in your mind's eye.
Phase 3, brainstorming. This is distributed cognition, capturing all ideas without any judgment.
Your brain just starts throwing out related ideas in no particular order.
Is Luigi's open on Tuesdays? Who should we invite? Do we need to get gas first? I wonder if they have that pasta dish I like. Should we take an Uber? It's chaotic, and that's fine. It's just capturing data.
Phase 4, organizing. Structuring those chaotic components and sequences.
Now your brain sorts the data. Okay, first we need to call Luigi's to see if they even have a table. If they do, then we'll text Sarah to see if she can come. Then I need to get dressed. You build a logical sequence. And finally, phase 5, identifying next actions.
I will pick up my phone right now and dial Luigi's number. That is the natural planning model. It flows effortlessly. You don't even realize you are doing it.
But contrast that beautiful natural flow with what the sources call unnatural planning, which is practically a religion in corporate environments.
Unnatural planning is the antithesis of how the brain works. It is when a boss walks into a room and says, "We need a new software launch. I want to see a fully organized execution timeline and a Gantt chart on my desk by 5 p.m.
It's the ultimate corporate horror story. Imagine the scene. You are sitting in a sterile, fluorescent-lit conference room. The air is stale. Some executive at the head of the table is demanding a highly structured, phase-by-phase execution timeline for a project that absolutely nobody in the room actually understands the fundamental purpose of yet.
It's a disaster.
They skip phase 1. Why are we even building the software? They skip phase 2. What does wild success actually look like for the user? They skip phase 3. Brainstorming. And they jump straight to phase 4, demanding an organized schedule. Give me the dates. It completely paralyzes people.
It creates immense toxic stress because the human brain literally does not know how to organize information. It hasn't brainstormed. For an outcome it hasn't envisioned. For a purpose it doesn't understand. When you force unnatural planning, you get terrible, rigid plans that break at the first sign of real-world friction.
I want to circle back to phase 2 of the natural model, outcome visioning, because this isn't just a woo-woo manifest your reality concept. It is deeply tied to hard neuroscience. The sources mention something called the reticular activating system in the brain. How does this actually work?
This is one of the most fascinating neurological mechanics we have. Your reticular activating system, or RAS, is essentially a high-powered mental filter located at the base of your brain.
A filter.
Imagine your brain is an incredibly exclusive high-end nightclub. Millions of pieces of sensory information, sights, sounds, ideas are trying to get in the door every single second. If your brain let them all in, you would go insane. So the RAS acts as the giant intimidating bouncer with a clipboard standing at the door. It only lets in information that is deemed highly relevant to you.
Okay, so how does outcome visioning play into that?
When you vividly imagine what wild success looks like for a project, when you truly envision the outcome in high definition, you're actively programming the bouncer's clipboard. You are telling your brain this specific outcome is now a VIP. Suddenly, your brain will start noticing resources, ideas, conversations, and opportunities in your environment that were always there, but you were previously ignoring them because your filter wasn't tuned to them.
It's why when you decide to buy a red Honda, you suddenly see red Hondas everywhere.
Exactly. As the author points out, you literally won't see how to do it until you see yourself doing it. Outcome visioning programs the hardware to find the solution.
So applying this natural planning, model purpose, vision, brainstorm, organize, next action perfectly aligns a single project. It unsticks the stuck project. But if we want to align an entire life, our career trajectory, our family obligations, our long-term legacy, we have to zoom all the way out past the individual projects to the highest possible altitudes.
This is where we look at the big picture.
Which brings us to our final overarching segment, the 6 horizons of focus.
We've spent almost this entire deep dive in the weeds, looking at the daily runway of next actions and inboxes. But the methodology provides a beautiful altitude model to map out and align all of your commitments across the entire spectrum of your life.
Let's run through these altitudes, starting from the ground up. At the very bottom, ground zero, we have the runway. These are your current physical next actions. The phone calls, the emails, the errands, the granular details of today.
The day-to-day stuff.
Moving up to 10,000 feet, we have your current projects. The 30 to 100 multi-step outcomes you want to finish this year. getting the car tuned up, launching the website. At 20,000 feet, things get broader. These are your areas of responsibility. These are the hats you wear.
Like your roles?
Right. At work, you might be responsible for staff development and quarterly sales. At home, you wear the hat of a parent, a spouse, or someone responsible for personal health and financial stability. You don't finish these, you maintain them.
Ongoing responsibilities.
At 30,000 feet, you are looking at 1 to 2 year goals. Where do you want your career or your family to be in the near future? At 40,000 feet, it's your 3 to 5 year vision, your long-term trajectory. And finally, at 50,000 feet, you reach the stratosphere, life purpose and core values. Why do you exist? What is your legacy?
The really big questions.
Now here's the twist. If you read traditional top-down business gurus and life coaches, they will universally tell you to start at 50,000 feet. They say, define your ultimate life purpose first. Write your personal mission statement, and then magically, everything else will naturally fall into place down to your daily actions. But this methodology reveals a totally counterintuitive secret. You have to work from the bottom up.
Working top-down is the biggest trap in the self-help industry. Why do traditional top-down gurus fail people so consistently? Because focusing solely on a grand 5-year vision doesn't simplify your daily life. It actually adds immense pressure and guilt.
That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine you're sitting at your desk trying desperately to write a profound personal mission statement about your life's purpose at 50,000 feet. But meanwhile, your physical runway is completely covered in trash. You have 500 unanswered emails screaming at you. 3 unpaid utility bills are sitting on your keyboard. Your boss is actively angry about a missed deadline. You cannot safely fly the plane up to 50,000 feet when the runway is on fire.
The anxiety just pulls you right back down.
The anxiety of the unmanaged, chaotic details of your daily life will constantly, violently pull your attention back down to the ground. You will feel like a frog trying to think about legacy when you can't even remember to buy cat food.
It's essentially Maslow's hierarchy of needs applied directly to modern productivity. You cannot reach the peak of self-actualization at 50,000 feet if you are constantly terrified of being eaten by a bear on the runway.
That's exactly it.
And in modern knowledge worker terms, being eaten by a bear is missing a critical project deadline or having your electricity shut off because your inbox is a disaster zone. You have to secure the perimeter first.
Getting absolute control of your physical and digital world first, clearing the inbox to 0, defining the physical next actions, establishing the hard edges of your calendar, committing to the weekly review, that clears the psychic decks. It stops the RAM drain. And when your brain finally realizes that the mundane details of survival are locked down in a system it can completely trust, it relaxes.
And then you can actually...
And in that relaxation, your mind is finally free to naturally float up to those higher altitudes. You can engage in true, strategic, creative, and purposeful thinking without the background hum of anxiety.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's unpack and synthesize everything we've explored. We started with the visceral feeling of the crashed browser, the overwhelmed mind operating with too many open tabs.
The cooling fan whirring.
We learned that the modern knowledge worker's dilemma is caused by the amorphous, never-ending nature of our commitments, rendering old ABC to-do lists useless. We discovered the profound truth that stress is caused by broken agreements with ourselves, and that our biological brain acts as a dumb terminal, constantly draining our RAM with open loops.
Right.
To fix the hardware crash, we instituted the rigorous 100% mind sweep to collect all our stuff from our physical and mental environments. We learned the alchemy of processing, deciding what things are rather than doing them, determining clear, intended outcomes and highly specific physical next actions to overcome the paralysis of the creative mind.
Beating the procrastination.
We leveraged the brutal mathematical efficiency of the 2-minute rule to clear the underbrush. We organized those actions into a trusted system with hard edges, relying on context-based lists and protecting our sacred calendar for the hard landscape of time.
Keeping it pristine.
We committed to the engine maintenance of the weekly review to prevent entropy, fighting the cultural resistance to pause, all to achieve that incredible pre-vacation clarity. We navigated our daily, in-the-moment choices using the 4-criteria model, filtering by context, time, energy, and priority, allowing us to be productive even when exhausted.
Matching the work to your biology.
When massive projects got complex, we rejected unnatural corporate planning and engaged the natural planning model, using our reticular activating system as a bouncer to vision success and find resources. And finally, we understood that to reach the 50,000-foot view of our life's purpose, we must secure the perimeter first and master the runway from the bottom up.
It is a comprehensive, airtight ecosystem for living and working in the modern world. If there is one core truth to distill from all of this deep dive today, it is that true productivity isn't about grinding harder, typing faster, or working longer hours. That is a recipe for burnout.
Absolute burnout.
True productivity is about systematically externalizing your commitments into a trusted architecture so that your mind can return to its natural evolutionary state. Clear, flexible, creative, and entirely present in the moment.
And that leads me to a final, provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about the rest of your day. I want you to imagine it's 3:00 p.m. on a random Tuesday. You open your computer and check your email, and your inbox is literally empty, processed to zero.
Imagine that feeling.
You look at your master projects list, and every single project, from buying tires to launching the company initiative, has clearly defined next actions safely tucked away in a context list that you completely implicitly trust.
The system's working.
The internal noise, that constant nagging anxiety, the whirring of the cooling fan in your brain has completely stopped. The pond is totally calm. If you suddenly found yourself with 2 hours of entirely clear, unburdened psychic space, what would your brilliant mind actually choose to think about? What ideas would you have if you weren't so busy holding on to things?
It's an incredibly exciting question, isn't it? When the mind is finally free from holding on to the mundane, the possibilities for deep creativity, strategic vision, and genuine human connection are absolutely boundless.
So the next time you feel the panic rising, the next time you feel the system starting to lag, remember, you don't need to be smarter. You don't need a faster biological processor. You just need to close some of those open tabs. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time as we continue to transform complex ideas into actionable mastery. Until then, keep your mind like water.